My name is Madison Clark. I'm 29 years old, and last Thanksgiving my father live-streamed me, setting the dinner table with the caption, "Our family made at work." My brother laughed. My sister filmed me back. The room clinked with silverware and humiliation. I walked out before dessert, but not before I saw the comments spreading like wildfire online. They thought it was just another family joke, but what they didn't know was, I never forget a wound. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by your own family. Because what happened next wasn't just another awkward holiday fight. It was the day I stopped being their servant and started becoming their biggest mistake. I grew up in a house that always smelled like burnt coffee and floor cleaner. The Clark family home sat at the end of a quiet street in Ohio. 2 floors, beige siding, and a porch that creaked when you walked on it. From the outside, it looked normal, peaceful, even. But inside, peace was a luxury that depended entirely on my father's mood. Harold Clark believed discipline was love. And by discipline, he meant control. He controlled what we ate, what we watched, when we spoke. Every Saturday morning, he'd turn off the TV, clap his hands, and say, "Let's see who actually lives here." That was code for chores. Tiffany always disappeared right after that, claiming she had to run an errand. Connor would sit in the garage pretending to fix something. That left me. I vacuumed, dusted, scrubbed. I was 10 when it first became clear I was the help, not the daughter. I remember one night, Mom made pot roast. It was one of those humid August evenings when the air stuck to your skin. Tiffany showed up late, wearing a new pink dress. Dad stood up, kissed her on the forehead, and said, "There's my princess." When he turned to me, he just nodded at the plates. "You missed a spot." I looked down, realizing he meant the streak of gravy near his fork. No thank you. No smile. Just that tone. I wiped it clean. That night I lay in bed, my fingers still smelling of bleach. I told myself it didn't matter. But it did. When I was 13, I learned to read my father's footsteps. Heavy steps meant he'd been drinking. Lighter ones meant I had a chance to get through the night without a fight. He'd sit in his recliner, watching the local news, a beer in one hand, the remote in the other. "You're too quiet," he'd say. "That's why no one remembers you." I'd smile anyway, because fighting back only made it worse. My mom Linda was gentle but tired. Always tired. She moved like a shadow behind him, refilling his glass, pretending not to hear the jabs. She used to whisper, "Just keep your head down, Maddie. He's had a hard life." I believed her for too long. High school was the first time I tasted freedom. I got a part-time job at a diner down the street. The owner, Mrs. K, paid me minimum wage and free pie at closing. I saved every dollar in a jar hidden behind my textbooks. The day I received my acceptance letter from Ohio State, I thought maybe, just maybe, I'd earn my way out. But then Dad called me into the living room. He held the letter like it was junk mail. "You think we can afford this? Your brother's truck payment is behind. Be useful for once." I watched him tear the letter in half. That night, Tiffany posted a photo online with the caption, "College life. Here I come." Even though she was just taking night classes at a community college I'd helped her apply for. Mom said, "At least one of my girls will make it." I smiled, but something in me cracked. Years passed like that. Work, save, give. I was 22 when I started sending money home every month. For groceries, Mom said. Later, I found out it went toward Tiffany's credit card debt. By 26, I'd become the family ATM. Birthdays, car repairs, emergencies. I kept telling myself this was love. That family was about sacrifice. One winter, the pipes froze. I paid for the plumber. Dad didn't even say thank you. He just grunted. "Guess your job's finally good for something." Still, there were good moments, small ones that kept me hooked. Mom's soft laugh when we baked together. The sound of snow hitting the window at night. Those moments tricked me into believing things could change. I didn't know then that the quiet wasn't healing, it was loading. The last calm memory I have before everything imploded was a Sunday dinner in early November. Dad was telling the same story about how he built this family from scratch. Tiffany kept scrolling on her phone, laughing at something I wasn't part of. Connor poured another beer. Mom handed me a dish towel and whispered, "You always make things look nice." It sounded like praise, but it felt like a chain. I didn't know it then, but that dinner would be the last time I mistook silence for peace. After that November dinner, the days began to blur. Work at the hospital was exhausting, but at least there, I had a name badge that said administrative manager, not maid. Every morning, I'd walk through the automatic doors, smell the sharp disinfectant, and think, this is the only place I exist as someone else. Then I'd drive home, the air in my car thick with silence, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, trying to prepare myself for whatever waited inside. The Clark house was like a stage set that never changed. Same beige walls, same broken clock that stopped at 9:14, same arguments repeating, like reruns. Tiffany's voice was always the first I heard. Maddie, can you Venmo me? Just 200? I'll pay you back Friday. Friday never came. Connor would mock me from the couch. Don't you get tired of playing Cinderella? And Dad would smirk, sipping his beer, pretending not to hear, but loving every second. Mom had her moments of clarity, moments when I saw the woman she might have been before life drained her. Once, I found her sitting in the dark kitchen, staring at a cracked mug. She said softly, "Your father used to bring me coffee in bed. The first year of our marriage." Then one morning he stopped, and I thought it was because he'd forgotten, but he never forgot. He just decided I didn't deserve it anymore. I didn't know what to say. I just sat with her until the coffee went cold. When I turned 27, I opened a savings account in secret. Every paycheck, I moved a small amount 50, sometimes 100 into that account. I told myself it was for a vacation, but I knew better. It was my escape fund. I didn't know when I'd use it, but I knew someday I would. Tiffany started borrowing more. It began with emergencies, rent, car insurance, concert tickets. Then one day, she asked me to open a joint account, just for convenience. I agreed because she made it sound harmless. "You can trust me," she said. "We're sisters." Those words still echo like a curse. That Christmas, Dad bought Connor a set of power tools. Tiffany got a leather handbag. I unwrapped a calendar that said, "Smile more, worry less." They laughed when I forced a grin. "She likes practical stuff," Dad said. I excused myself to the kitchen, gripping the counter until my knuckles turned white. The sink was full of plates I hadn't even dirtied. Behind me, I could hear their laughter, the same rhythm, the same cruelty. That was the first time I felt it. The slow, cold shift of something breaking. The pattern went on until the Thanksgiving that changed everything. But before that night, there was one more wound. Small but deep. 2 weeks before the holiday, Mom asked if I could take a day off to help repaint the dining room. "Your dad wants it to look nice for guests," she said. I did it. I spent the whole day sanding and painting while he watched football in the next room. When I finished, he stood in the doorway and said, "Not bad. Guess those hospital jobs finally taught you something useful." I laughed, but it wasn't real. My throat burned. Later that night, I sat in my car outside the grocery store, staring at the fog on the windshield, and whispered to myself, "You don't belong here anymore." The next morning, Tiffany texted me a photo of a new dress with the message, "Thanksgiving outfit. You should wear something nice for once." I didn't reply. I looked around my small apartment, neat, quiet, mine. Then I thought about the house waiting for me that weekend, filled with noise, judgment, and cameras. I almost didn't go. But guilt is a strong chain, and I wasn't ready to cut it yet. The day before Thanksgiving, I stopped by to drop off groceries Mom had asked for. The moment I walked in, Dad shouted from the living room, "There she is, the family's personal assistant." Connor laughed. Tiffany looked up from her phone long enough to roll her eyes. Mom tried to hand me a grocery list, her fingers trembling. "Just ignore him," she whispered. But you can't ignore someone who's built a home out of humiliation. That night, as I set the table for rehearsal like every year, I noticed Dad's phone on the counter, propped against a glass. The camera light blinked red. He was testing it. I didn't know why. Not yet. But my chest tightened with a warning I couldn't name. When I finally left that evening, the sky was bleeding orange over the bare trees. The wind smelled like rain and metal. I remember thinking, maybe this year will be different. I didn't realize how right I was, just not in the way I hoped. I didn't know that within 24 hours, the same table I'd been polishing all my life would become the scene of my public humiliation. I didn't know my father's laughter would be broadcast to hundreds of people I'd never met. And I definitely didn't know that night would be the last time I ever set a table for anyone but myself. Thanksgiving morning started like every other year, too early, too heavy. The kitchen already smelled of roasted turkey and resentment. I arrived at 9, carrying pies I'd baked myself. No one looked up when I walked in. Connor was sprawled on the couch, yelling at the TV. Tiffany sat cross-legged on the counter, scrolling through her phone, laughing at something only she found funny. "Don't burn the rolls this time, Maddie," Dad said without even looking at me. His voice carried that lazy authority I'd known my whole life. I bit the inside of my cheek and set down the pies. "Sure thing," I said. My hands trembled as I laid out the silverware. Hours later, when the table was finally set, I caught Dad standing in the doorway, phone raised, recording. I thought it was for memories he used to film holidays when we were kids. I didn't know he'd already captioned the video. Our family maid, still doing what she does best. The dinner itself blurred into noise. Laughter that wasn't mine. Glasses clinking. Connor telling stories that made everyone else howl. I tried to tune it out, but my phone buzzed. A notification. Harold Clark posted a new video. I froze. When I opened it, my face filled the screen, bent over a tablecloth. The comments were already rolling in. "Told you she'd never move out," one said. "Still the helper," wrote another. Then my brother chimed in. "At least she's good at something." I looked across the table. They were laughing, my father, my siblings, like it was a comedy skit. I stood up, the chairs screeching behind me. "I'm done." My voice was small but sharp. No one stopped me as I grabbed my purse. The cold air hit like water when I stepped outside. I walked until my feet ached. When I finally called Aunt Joanne, she didn't ask questions. She just said, "Where are you?" She picked me up 10 minutes later, her old Chevy rumbling like a heartbeat in the dark. We didn't talk. She handed me a blanket, and I realized I'd been shaking. That night, lying on her guest bed, I scrolled through the video again. It had over 200 likes. Distant relatives, neighbors, even old co-workers had reacted with laughing emojis. The caption burned. "Always the helper, never the winner." That was the moment I stopped being their daughter. The next morning, a text from Tiffany lit up my phone. "Why can't I withdraw $2,500 from our account?" "No, are you okay?" No apology. Just that. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then typed back. "Because it's closed." She sent 6 messages in a row, angry, manipulative, childish. "You're bitter. You're selfish. You owe me." By noon, Dad texted, "Stop being dramatic. Grow up." That was his only message. I didn't reply. I was too busy moving the last of my savings into a new account under my name alone. That evening, Aunt Joanne made waffles and coffee. We ate in silence. The quiet wasn't awkward, it was clean. For the first time in years, I felt the weight slide off my chest. She finally spoke. "Don't go back," she said. "They'll only take more." I nodded, unsure if I could actually do it. But deep down, something in me had already closed the door. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again, this time a message in the family group chat called Family Goals. A photo popped up. My old room. Drawers pulled out. Mirrors shattered. Clothes scattered. Connor had captioned it. "Spring cleaning starts early." My stomach twisted. Tiffany commented, "Don't worry. We saved her trash journals." I dropped the phone. My body went cold. Aunt Joanne picked it up, read the messages, and muttered, "They're sick." I didn't cry. I just felt hollow, like someone had scraped out the inside of my chest. I called my cousin Daniel, the law student. "Can you check on the house?" He didn't hesitate. 20 minutes later, he texted a picture of my passport and laptop on his front seat. "That's all that's left worth saving," he wrote. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. That night, Mom called. "I didn't know they were going to do it," she whispered. "Your father said it was time you learned respect." Her voice cracked. I listened in silence. When she finished apologizing, I said quietly, "You let it happen." Then I hung up. It was the first time I'd ever hung up on her, and it felt like cutting an umbilical cord that should have been severed years ago. The following week passed like static. Every time my phone buzzed, my pulse jumped. I started to dread notifications, not because I cared what they said, but because each one reminded me of the people I'd finally stopped belonging to. Then came the text from Mom again. "There's something in your room you should see." I ignored it for a day, maybe 2. But curiosity is cruel. Eventually, I called Daniel and asked if he could check. He drove over that night and FaceTimed me from the hallway. The floor still glimmered with shards of my broken mirror. Under the bed, he pulled out a shoebox with my name written in black marker. Inside were torn cards, old photos, and a dusty bank booklet. He flipped to the last page and froze. Maddie, there's an account here. Opened in your name when you were 14. It's empty. I blinked. Empty? Drained, he said. 2 weeks after you turned 21. That was the moment something in me shifted from pain to clarity. My father hadn't just humiliated me, he'd stolen from me. 2 nights later, Aunt Joanne's phone rang. It was Mom again, crying this time. He took loans under her name, she said. He said he'd pay them before she noticed. I made her repeat it while Joanne recorded the call. Proof. My pulse steadied as she spoke like I'd been waiting years for confirmation that I wasn't crazy. By the weekend, I'd moved into Uncle Frank and Aunt Ellen's house on the other side of town. They didn't ask questions, just handed me keys and said, rest. Their home smelled like cedar and clean sheets, a scent I started to associate with safety. Daniel brought over a small folder. We can file this, he said, tapping the papers. Identity theft. Financial fraud. I hesitated. He's my father. Daniel looked at me. He stopped being that when he used your name to borrow money. While I was still processing that, another blow landed. Tiffany tried to open a new credit card using my information. The bank flagged it instantly and called me to verify. I sat in the kitchen holding the phone, listening as the representative read off my sister's name. We suspected it might be attempted fraud, they said. My stomach turned, but my voice stayed steady. It is, I replied. Within 24 hours, the Clark family group chat exploded again. Tiffany wrote, "You ruined my life. I can't even apply for a card now." Connor added, "You made this a big deal. It was just a joke video. Grow thicker skin." Then Dad's message, "You've always been dramatic. This is why no one wants you around." I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't need to, because that same morning, Dad's boss, Mr. Whitman, emailed me. His tone was polite, professional. "I just wanted to check in after seeing the Facebook post your father made. I hope you're okay." That single message told me everything. The video had reached his workplace. I could almost picture the whispers at the office, the side glances. For the first time, Dad's mockery cost him something. Mom called again that night. "He's worried," she said, "about his job." "Good," I said. "Maddie," she whispered, as if my name were fragile. "Mom," I interrupted, my voice calm. "You knew what he did. You just never stopped him." She started crying again, but I didn't comfort her. Some things can't be patched with tears. The next morning, Daniel came over with a thick envelope. "This is everything," he said. Copies of the fake loans, screenshots of texts, the video still frame, Mom's recorded confession. I looked at the pile. "It's enough to ruin him," I said. Daniel shook his head. "He ruined himself. You're just showing everyone how." I didn't sleep that night. I laid all the papers out on the bed, my father's lies lined up like evidence in a courtroom. I stared at them until dawn painted the walls gold. Then I whispered to the empty room. They thought I'd crawl back. They have no idea what's coming. Outside, a cold wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere across town, my father was probably waking up to the first day of a life he could no longer control. And for the first time in my life, that thought didn't make me sad. It made me steady. It made me free. It happened on a gray Tuesday morning, the kind where the sky felt like concrete pressing down. I was sitting at Uncle Frank's kitchen table, a mug of black coffee cooling beside a stack of printed documents. Daniel leaned over my shoulder, scanning every line before sliding the folder toward me. "It's ready," he said. Inside that folder was my father's undoing bank statements, the drained account, screenshots of Tiffany's messages, and the letter where Harold Clark had literally confessed. I used her SSN. I needed the money. I had highlighted those words in red. Seeing them on paper made it real. Uncle Frank picked up his phone, dialed his lawyer, and said, "We're filing today." His voice was steady, almost casual, like ordering groceries. But my pulse raced so hard it hurt. By noon, we were sitting in a lawyer's office downtown. The building smelled of paper and cold air. The attorney, a woman named Miss Harper, flipped through the evidence quietly. When she reached the signed confession, she looked up at me. "He committed at least 3 federal offenses," she said. "Do you want to press charges?" For a long moment, I couldn't speak. My throat felt dry, my hands trembling on the edge of the desk. All I could see was Dad's smirk that Thanksgiving night, the way his finger hovered over post, how proud he looked watching me fold napkins like it was my purpose in life. Yes, I said finally. I want him to know I could. She nodded. Then we'll start with a fraud report and a cease and desist. That night, I didn't eat. I just sat on the porch, watching snow begin to fall. Aunt Ellen came out, wrapped me in a blanket, and whispered, "You're doing the right thing." I wasn't sure what right even meant anymore. Justice didn't feel like victory, it felt like mourning something that should have been safe. The next morning, everything exploded. At 8:17 a.m., Daniel's phone lit up with a message from one of his friends who interned at Dad's company. Check Facebook. My father's video, the same one he'd posted and deleted, had resurfaced. Someone in his office had found it in the cloud and shared it in a local community group with a new caption. So, this is the man who mocked his daughter while stealing her identity. By lunch, the post had over 10,000 shares. The comments were brutal. People tagged the company, the local union, even the county police page. By afternoon, Mr. Whitman had no choice but to act. Harold Clark was suspended pending investigation. I didn't celebrate. I just stared at the screen, numb. Aunt Joanne called and said, "You did it." "No," I replied. "He did." That evening, Mom showed up at the door, face pale, coat zipped wrong. "He's losing everything," she said, voice shaking. "He blames you." I met her eyes. "He should. He earned it." She stepped closer, whispering, "I'm leaving him." I believed her this time. Maybe the silence breaking was contagious. Later that night, Daniel brought in a manila envelope the official confirmation that the fraud case had been opened. I signed my name on the final page. My hand didn't shake. When the lawyer left, I walked out to the mailbox under the cold porch light, clutching my own envelope. Inside were copies of every document, every screenshot, and one handwritten note that simply read, "You don't own me anymore." I slid it into their mailbox at dawn. The air was bitter, the driveway coated in frost. For the first time, I didn't look back to see if a light came on inside the house. I just stood there, watching my breath turn white in the air, realizing that revenge didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered quiet, cold, and final. The house stayed silent for 2 weeks. No calls, no messages, not even Mom. It was like the whole Clark family had been erased overnight. For the first time, that silence didn't scare me. It felt like oxygen. Then, one afternoon, Daniel walked into the kitchen, holding an envelope. "It came from him," he said. My chest tightened when I saw the handwriting. Harold's. The return address was the same house I'd grown up in. I stared at it for a long time before tearing it open. Inside were 3 pages and a photograph. The photo was old me at 8 years old, standing next to a crooked birthday cake, my dad's arm around my shoulder, both of us smiling at something off camera. For a second, the memory tried to make me soften. Then I started reading. The first page wasn't an apology. It was a justification. "You always thought you were better than us," he wrote. "I just wanted you to know what life costs." The next page changed tone, uneven, almost panicked. "They're looking into my accounts. Tell them it was a misunderstanding." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound that startled even me. For years, I'd been the quiet one, the helper, the ghost. And now he wanted my help to disappear the same way I had. I folded the letter back into the envelope, slipped the photo on top, and sealed it shut again. "What will you do?" Daniel asked. "Nothing," I said. "He's already done enough." That night, I placed the envelope in my drawer beside a folder labeled Evidence, Closed. The case would go on without me. I didn't need to chase revenge. The truth was doing that for me, one consequence at a time. Still, before turning off the light, I whispered to the empty room. They thought I'd stay the servant. They were wrong. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, hit subscribe. Because stories like mine aren't just drama, they're real, and they happen behind closed doors every day. Sometimes, the ones who smile the most are the ones surviving the longest. And if you've ever been called too sensitive, too dramatic, or too much, remember those words are how they keep you quiet. Don't let them. This story isn't over. Mine isn't, either. Stay tuned, and don't forget to share your story below.